Hey everybody, Heather here. So I had a request to do a watercolor video, so I thought that this could be the week, and we're going to be doing this super cute Magnolia image called Mail Tilda. Isn't she cute with her little envelope she's mailing to her friend? Love her. I will put a link down in the description box to the card kit and all the supplies I used. I would love for you to come shopping with me. If you have a question, leave me a comment. I'm always happy to get back to you on questions. And if you'd hit the like button, that'd be super awesome. And if you're not a subscriber yet, go ahead and do that so that you get all of my new videos. So I've already stamped my image on Canson 140-pound watercolor cold pressed paper. So let's do some coloring. So to color today, I'm going to be using my little piece of paper towel, my Zig Detail water brush, my Tim Holtz ink palette with my Distress Ink re-inkers dripped into the little holes. I also have a little cup of water over here in case I get too much ink on my brush. I can dip it and wipe it off. So that's all the things I use. Oh, and I have my little laminated butterflies here. So I colored all these butterflies on watercolor paper, punched them out, and then laminated on this little sheet. And I'm just going to use this to basically dip my brush in some paint, put it on here, mix it up with another color, and then use that ink on to my coloring. So let's start out by doing our outlining around our girl, and for that I'm going to use antique linen. So I've got my water brush, and I've already tested it on the back of my hand to see if it's too wet. And when I'm doing the outlining, I don't mind if it's a little bit damper. That way it spreads the ink a little bit better. So I'm going to grab a little bit of my antique linen on my brush. And then I like to I'm going to start down here underneath of her arm here. And I'm going to put a little bit of color on. I try not to go too far. I want it to blend out here on the outside, so I'm going to start wiping it out towards the edge just to soften up that color in here. Okay, and then when it's all gone, I'm going to wipe my brush off on my paper towel, and then I'm going to grab a little bit more color, and we're going to do the same thing. I just want to work my way all the way around. Okay, and so I have quite a bit of ink on my brush. So I'm going to wipe that excess off on my paper towel and then come back with just my water. And going in a little circly motion, I'm just going to bring this ink out in here into my whites. And I'm collecting ink, so I'm going to wipe my brush off again. And come back up here and pull that out here into the background. And we'll grab some more. And we'll just continue around to the other side of our girl. Up here around our envelope. And if your brush starts to drag, it may be getting dry, so you might want to give it a little squeeze. Mine's getting a little dry there, so let's give it a little squeeze. And then bring some more of this color out here away from my image to soften the edges. I'll grab some more from them. Just continue right around the outside. Go around these little bubbles and the hearts. And let's go up here around our girl's head. Got a little too much on there, so I'm going to wipe off my brush again, and I'll come back and we'll bring this ink out here into our background. Dab a little bit of that excess off. Come back and soften that edge. Okay, let's go over here and work on this other side. Let's get right in here first before I forget about in between her legs. That would be something I would do. And let's continue around her head here, down to the feet. I'm going to go around a little bit around these hearts. And then come back up here and soften this edge just a little bit. I got a little bit of a line right here. I don't want to have that on there. Grab some more ink. Continue down the side. So I didn't get very much that time, so I'm going to grab a little bit more. And I'll bring that out here. So you give that a little bit of time to dry. So I've given it a minute to dry here. And I got a little bit on her arm, so I'm going to go up here and get that wet and wipe that off. There we go. We don't want to have her arm be green. And now I want to add a little bit of evergreen bough, just to add a little bit of color in some on the outside of my girl here. So I'm going to grab a little bit of that. And let's see, let's add a little bit down here. Then I'm going to dab my brush off and come back and soften that a little bit. We just want to add a little bit of color. So we're going to grab a little bit more. And let's go add a little bit up here underneath my envelope. And then I'm going to dab off that excess. I'm going to come back with just my water and spread that out a little bit. Okay, let's add a little bit up here on the top too. Turn my girl here a little bit. Dab off my excess. Come back and soften it with just some water. And so I got a little bit too much, so I'm going to pull some more away from there. And soften it out here into the edge. Okay. Let's add a little dab in here. And again, dab off your excess. And then come in and soften that edge. Dab off your excess, softening, and you can just add it wherever you want. I'm just going to continue around here adding a little bits till we get to the other side. I'm going to add a little bit up here by her hair, and maybe a little bit over here. Soften this side. Okay, let's get a little bit more over here on her hair. That needs a little bit more, I think. And I didn't let it dry, so it's kind of bleeding out, but we're going to push that around here and bring some color out here to the edge. And let's see, let's do a little bit next to her cheek. And dab off my excess and come back and soften that a little bit more. And then let's add a little bit down here. Let's put some down here underneath of her hand. Maybe underneath of her shoe. Remember, if your brush gets dry, make sure to give it a little squeeze so it gets a little more wetness going there. You don't want it to feel like it's dragging across your paper. Mine feels like it's just floating across the paper. A little too dark right here. I think I'll soften that up right a little bit. Okay, and then we're going to let that dry for a second. So now that we've let that dry, let's grab a little bit, let's do our skin. So let's do Tattered Rose. So I'm going to grab a little bit of that on my brush. I'm going to start down here at her foot. And I'm going to lay my brush down where I want it to be darkest. So I want it to be darkest in the inside. And then I'm just going to lightly bring that color over here to the edge. And then let's add a little bit, see if I have enough on my brush. We'll add some to this foot. Okay. I'm going to wipe my brush off and I'm going to grab a little bit more. I'm going to go up here and we'll do her arm. I need a little bit more. Let's see here, let's get a little bit up here underneath of her finger. And it's just our first coat, so I'm not worried about it being light. I just want to start some color on there. And we'll grab some for her face. And for her face, I want to start up here underneath her hairline. So I'm going to put a bunch of my color up here at her hairline. And then as my brush runs out, we're going to bring my brush strokes and circle down here towards the bottom of her face. I'll lighten this up a little bit more, so I'm going to come back and bring that color down some more. And I want to do the same thing from the bottom. So I'm going to go down here along the bottom of her face, add some color, and then I want to use my brush, just the water, to bring that color up into the middle. And I got a little too much, so I'm going to wipe my brush off and come back and drag that color up. And that looks pretty good for a first coat. So let's go down here and add a little bit more to our feet, or to our legs. So we got a little bit more color. Make those a little bit pinker. Just work our way back up our girdle here. Okay, now we're going to give that a second try, and then we're going to add some shading. For our shading, I'm going to use Tattered Rose and tea dye mixed, and I use that all the time for my shading, so I have it mixed in a little indentation in my palette, so I don't have to mix it up every time. I just go and get some and use it on here. So I want to add that where I want to have some darker shadow, so let's do a little bit here along the inside of her leg and underneath of her pants. Same for this side. And then I'm going to wipe all that excess ink I have on my brush off. I'm going to come back and just very lightly feather that color out here onto her foot. And if you get too much, just wipe your brush off and come back and do some more feathering. And we'll go up here and we'll do our arms. So again, I'm going to go next to her sleeve here. And then I'm going to come down the bottom of her arm and maybe a little bit next to this envelope. And then I wipe my excess brush, or my excess ink off. And I come back and we're just going to soften that edge. And I'm kind of doing my brush in just little tiny circles and working it out here up into the top of her arm. Let's grab a little bit for this other arm. and her neck. And then for her face up here, I want to add a little bit underneath of her hairline. Go right up along here. And again, I'm going in little bitty circles. I got too much ink, so I'm going to wipe my brush off. I'm going to come back and work over that line and pull it down onto her forehead a little bit more. I just keep swirling it around until I feel that I've got enough on there. And I didn't add too much color to her face the first time through because I want to add her cheeks and then go over her face again. So I didn't want it to be too dark. So let's add a little bit down here on the bottom. Let's turn my girl a little bit here. And work that color around here on the bottom of her cheeks a little bit. Okay, then we're going to let that dry and we'll add some cheek color. Alright, so for our cheeks we're going to use spun sugar and worn lipstick mixed together. So I've grabbed my little handy laminated sheet and I'm going to dip my brush into some spun sugar in my palette. And I'm just going to wipe it on here. You could use a piece of acetate or a piece of plastic or acrylic block if that's what you have. And then I'm going to grab a little dab of my worn lipstick and I want to mix that in. Okay, and then I wiped all my excess off my brush, and I'm going to use this little dab of ink to add some color over here. So I try to use these little dots she has on her cheeks as my guide. So I'll start with a little bit for my first coat. Okay, and you have to let it dry in between coats. So while that's drying, let's go and do, her hair. So I'm going to grab a little bit of my walnut stain on my brush. And let's start, I want to lay down where I want it to be darkest, so I'm going to start in the part of her hair right here. And I'm going to lay a little color down, and I'm going to use that color to work my way down here to the bottom. See how far we can take our color. Okay, let's grab a little bit more and let's do this other side. So again, I'm going to start up here to part. And I'm just going to use the color I have on my brush to come down onto her hair. Grab a little bit more color. Let's do down here. And I think I'll add a little bit more over here. This is kind of light over here. And maybe a little bit more up here at the top to get this started. I want it to be pretty, have some light spots, but that's pretty light for me. Okay, and then I want to add some more cheek color, so I'm going to grab some of my mixed spun sugar and my worn lipstick over here I have mixed up. I'm going to add a little dab of color on her cheeks. A little bit more for this side. Dab my brush off, and I'm going to use just a little bit of water to kind of soften this edge right here. And then we're going to give those both a second to dry. Alright, let's add some more color to her hair. So I'm going to continue on with my walnut stain. I'm going to grab a little bit on my brush. And let's see if we can add a little bit of shadow. So let's start down here at the bottom where a little curl is happening. I'm going to put a little bit in that curl. and bring it up here into her hair. I don't want to go too far, so I'm going to wipe my brush off, and then I'm going to soften this little edge I've got right here. And then I'm going to grab some more. So I'm just grabbing a little bit on the tippy tip of my brush. Okay, and right here it kind of dips in, so I'm going to give that a little bit of color where it comes away from my dip. And then again, I want to soften my edge, so I'm going to wipe my brush off and pull that color up here underneath of her arm. Okay, grab some more color. We're going to do the same thing up here where her hair is coming out from behind her face. And she's got a little dab right here that's kind of in between her shirt and her chin that you can see through, so I'm going to dab that real quick so I don't forget about it. And then again, we're going to bring this color down. And then I have some ink on my brush, so I'm going to wipe that off. And then come back and bring this, soften these edges. Okay, and I want to add a little bit on this side of the little hump too. So I'm going to go back in here, a little bit of color, wipe that excess off, come back with just my water and soften that edge. Then we'll come up here and let's do this little curl right here. So I'm going to dab a little bit on my curl and bring that ink up here past her face a little bit. I'm going to grab some more. I'll come up here and I'm going to do her parts. So let's work my way along her part and just pull that ink away out here onto her hair a little bit. Okay, and how about she's got a couple of little where her hair kind of dips down into her, back behind her hair, so like right here, and right here kind of dips. So add a little bit of color in there and then come back and soften that edge. Okay, and then let's go do this side. So over here, let's do a little bit, oops, let me grab a little bit more ink here. Do right up next to her cheek. Pull some of this color down into this hair down here. And then we'll come up here and we'll do her other side of her part up here. And again, I want to go right in her part. And I'm going to wipe my excess paint off and come back and soften that edge. And then like the other side, I want to do some of these little pieces that go behind. So like this little piece is kind of going behind up here, there. And we dab our brush off and we come back and just soften that edge. And let's also do a little bit right here next to her face. Wipe my excess ink off, come back and pull that up here into her face, into her hair. So I've gathered a little bit of ink on there, so I'm going to wipe it off. I'm going to come back and pull this up a little bit more, just to soften that edge. And then you can either blast it with your heat gun or you can give it a couple of minutes to dry. Alright, so our hair's still a little bit wet, so I'm going to let that dry and I'm going to add some cheek color. So let's add a little bit of worn lipstick. I want to pinken these up just a little bit. So I'm going to grab a little bit of my worn lipstick and I'm going to add that out here towards the edge. Then I'm going to wipe my brush off. I'm going to come back and we're going to pull that color out just a little bit here onto our cheek. Same for this side. Pull that out a little bit. I'm trying not to pull it out too far. I want it to stay kind of inside these little dots she's already got on her face. I think I might add a little bit more to this other side over here. Grab a little bit more. Maybe pinken this side up just a little bit more. Okay, then we're going to give that a second to dry. So let's go up here and do some more on her hair. Let me grab my walnut stain here. Okay, so I'm going to grab my walnut stain. I'm just going to continue to add some color. So let's go start over here on this side again. And I think I'll darken this side up just a little bit more here where it's coming out from behind her hair or behind her body. And down here. I think right here where it's kind of coming in behind this piece, I'm going to add a little bit of color. And let's get this. I'm not going to do her cheek area there, so I'm going to skip up here and do up where her roots are, because I want her cheeks to dry right here. I don't want to pull brown into her cheek. So I'm going to darken up her roots. Couple of these little spots where it kind of curls behind. Got a little bit out of the lines there. See if I can mush that back in a little bit. And let's go do this other side. So again, let's do her roots. Bring some of that color out. And our little spots here on the sides. And now let's go do these little spots down here closer to her cheeks. I'll at least start over here. And add a little bit more over here. I maybe want to add a little bit coming out away from her pocket or her body right here. Let's add a little bit more color to her face. For that, I'm going to grab some Tattered Rose. And I'm going to start up here underneath of her hairline. And use my color up here, and then I'm going to wipe it off, and I'm going to just use water from my brush to pull that down into her face. Come over these cheeks. I think I'll add a little bit down here along the bottom. And then pull that color up here into her cheeks again. And we'll give that a few seconds to dry. Let's hop down here and work on her outfit next. And for that, we're going to use Evergreen Bough. So I'm going to grab a little bit of that on my brush. And I'm going to start, let's start up here on her sleeve. So remember, you want to put your ink down where you want it to be darkest first. I put a little bit of ink down, wipe my brush off, and then come back with just my water and bring that ink out here towards the edge. A little bit up here on her bodice. And just add a soft, light wash of color. So we're going to do the same thing down here. Grab a little bit more color. And I'm going to start here in between her legs. So I'll use this color to come down like this. Wipe that excess ink off. And then bring back just water. And bring that color over to the other side of her pants. And I'm going to bring what little brush color I have on there, I'm going to bring up here into the outfit on the top. Okay, and then we're going to do the same thing for the other leg. Wipe that excess ink off, come back, and use this color to bring it to the other side. And again, I'm going to use just a little bit of color I have on my brush to bring up here into the middle of her outfit. And then you let that dry. So I want to add a second coat of my Evergreen Bough to my outfit. Go up here and grab some color. And let's start up here on her sleeve again. Quite a bit of ink there, so I'm going to wipe my brush off. And we'll just continue adding a little bit of color to our little outfit. So let's add some over here. Underneath of her chin. And then again down here on her legs. So I'm kind of liking how much shadow I have in here on the inside of her legs. So let's add a little bit over here on this side over here. And wipe your brush off and come back and smooth that line. And I want to do the same thing for the other side. Got quite a bit of ink on there, so I'm going to wipe a little bit of that off. And then come back. And wipe my excess off, come back, and soften that edge. And I kept it fairly light here in the center. Let's hop up here and do this envelope next. For that, we're going to use black soot. So I'm going to grab a little bit of my black soot on my brush, and let's just put some here along the edge of my bottom of the envelope. And I'm just going to keep it light so I can work some color down here towards the bottom of my envelope. Okay, I'm going to wipe my brush off. I'm going to grab a little dab more, and we're going to do the same thing up here at the top. So let's go ahead and add a little bit here in this crease, and maybe around this cute little heart. Then I'm going to wipe my excess ink off. I'm going to come back with just water, and I'm going to use that ink I put down, that little bit of ink I put down, to wipe around on my envelope to make it a little light gray color. Okay, and I got a little bit too much ink still on my brush, so I'm going to wipe it off. I'm going to come back and I'm going to pick up a little bit more of that ink on my brush. Make it a little bit lighter. Spread it around a little bit more there. Got a little bit on my heart here. Let's kind of squish that off a little bit. Even though it's going to be red, it's not really going to matter. And I got a little bit on her hand. Let's move that up here and back onto the envelope. Okay, so while our envelope is drying, let's go down here and do her shoes. And for that, I used one lipstick for my first coat, so let me get that out. And get a little bit on my brush. And I'm just going to put that over the entire shoe. Grab some for the other side. And we'll do the same thing over here. That looks pretty good for a first coat. So let's go up here and do some of these hearts too. So since I did this envelope, let's work over here so that we can let that dry a little bit more. Lay down some of our one lipstick here in our little hearts. Let's see how dry that is. That's not too bad. Add a little bit in here on this, my heart, just to get that started. And I think I'll go down here again and add a little bit more to my shoe. And let's add a little bit to this other shoe. And then we'll give those a second to dry. Let's go back to our black soot again. So let's add some color to our soles of our shoes as long as we're down here and that's dried. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of my black soot and let's do down here. I'll pick up a little bit more here. That wasn't spreading very well. I let my brush dry out too much. Give it a little squeeze here. Okay, that looks good to get that started. Okay, so let's go up here now and add a little bit more color to our envelope. So I'm going to grab a little bit, and I want to add some shadows into where my creases are. So let's go in here. A little bit in there. And then I'm going to wipe all that excess off and just use a little bit of water to pull that away from that edge just a little bit. Soften out here. I don't want it to be too harsh out here on the outside. Okay, and the same thing down here. Let's go underneath of our heart. Okay, and then we'll wipe all that excess off. We'll come back, soften the edge. I picked up quite a bit of ink, so I'm going to wipe a lot of that, all that off. I'm going to come back and just go right along that again with just water. And then kind of pat my brush up and down out here to pounce it and get that softened up. And then let's do a little bit right here in this little crease. And get rid of that excess ink and come back with just water and soften that up. Alright, let's continue with our black soot. So I want to add a little bit more over here on this edge where all these cute little dots are. Darken that seam up a little bit. Oops, got my brush is a little too wet there. It's running out. Dry it off a little bit. Okay, let me grab a little bit for up here. Let's do a little dab right here where we got all these great little shadow dots. Maybe right in here. And then dab off your excess. And then come in and work that water out here to soften it up. Let's do the same thing over here. And then I better do a little bit over here on this side. Here's some great little shadow dots that the artist put on there for us. So I'm just going to use those. Add a little bit of shadow there. Okay, so I'm going to let that dry a little bit, and we'll see. Whoops, I got a little bit too much water. I'm going to use my paper towel to dab that up just a little bit. I might come back and add a little bit more, but let's grab our festive berries to add some more color to our shoe and to these great hearts. So I'm going to grab a little bit of my festive berries, and let's start up here at this little heart. And I'm just going to add some color right over the top of the last color. I'm going to darken those up a little bit. And wipe my brush off and grab a little bit more. Let's go ahead and do these. Okay, and then I'm going to leave the one on the purse for a minute because I want her purse or that envelope to dry. Let's go down here and add a little bit to our shoes. I'm going to put a little bit down here along the edge, and then I'm going to wipe my brush off, and then I pull this ink in towards the middle. And then I'm going to grab a little bit more. I'm going to let it dry a little bit on that side, so I'm going to add some on this side. And again, I'm going to wipe my brush off, and I'm going to pull this color into the middle of her shoe. And I'm going to grab some more, and I'm going to do the same thing for this side of her shoe. So go right down the edge, wipe my brush off, and then use that ink to pull it towards the middle of my shoe. Grab some more ink. Do the same thing on this side. Wipe your brush off. And then pull that ink towards the middle of your shoe. And then for the little heart up here, I'm going to add some over here on this side. And then I'm going to wipe my brush off, and I'm going to use that color to pull it towards this side over here. But I want to leave it a little bit lighter over here in the corner. Okay, so I'm liking that. So let me grab my black soot again, and I need to add a little bit more shadows to my envelopes, and we need to darken up the soles of her shoes a little bit, but I need those shoes to dry just a tad. So let's add a little bit more of our black soot up here onto our envelope. Grab a little bit more. Dab off. Grab a little bit more. And I think I'll just add a touch more right here. And then soften that edge. Okay, I'm liking the envelope, so let's go down here and see. That's dry. I'm trying to try not to touch the red just in case it's not all the way dry, but we're going to add a little bit of our black soot to the corners of our shoes. So let's do this corner and this corner in the middle. And then I'll wipe off my excess, and I'm just going to soften that edge just a little bit. Okay, like that. We're going to let that dry for a minute, and we're going to add the grass. So now let's add some grass down here. And for that, I'm going to use peeled paint. So let's grab a little dab of that. And I want to give her something to stand on, so let's go underneath of her shoe. Like so. And I'm going to bring my line out here. And then I just want to soften it, so I'm going to bring my brush right along the edges and just kind of bring it softly down to cause it to go down here to white. Okay, I'm going to grab a little bit more. I think I need a little bit more area. And I cut this out in an oval too for your kit, so you can bring the oval, bring your color down into your oval so that it kind of tapers off down in here. And softly bring that down. Alright, so now we have to add the flowers down here at the bottom, and I cheated. I used my distress markers for that, so I'm going to use peeled paint and Dusty Concord, and I'm just going to add some grass down here. So I'm going to take my marker, and I'm using the fine point, and we're just going to draw some grass. And you could add as many or as little as you want. I'm going to put a couple over here, and maybe a little one over here. And then I'm going to take my Dusty Concord, and again using the fine point, I'm just going to add some dots of color. So I'm going to put a dot there, and then I'm going to go down the side of my stem and add 3 or 4 little dots on that side. Same over here. And I'm going to get this one here in between our leg. And then these two over here. And that's all I did for those cute little flowers. Next, I wanted to add a little bit of shimmer to my shoes and the little hearts. So for that, I used some Perfect Pearls, and I used one of these cute little mini mister bottles. I put some water in there, and then I used the end of a regular paintbrush to just pick up some Perfect Pearls and dump it in here until it got as sparkly as I wanted. So maybe 3 small bitty scoops. And then I'm just going to take this, and I'm going to take my little sheet here, and I'm just going to spray a little bit on here, like so. And then I'm going to take my paintbrush and pick up some of that color, and I'm just going to dab it on top of my hearts. So they'll be a little bit shimmery. And I'm picking up a little bit of paint. It must still be wet a little bit. And we'll just dab a little bit on here. You could also use your Wink of Stella brush pen to just add some sparkles on there, or some, Stickle Stardust. Forgot what I was going to say. We just put this on here, give her shoes a little bit of sparkle. And you could just let this dry, and you could add more if you want it to be more shimmery. Depends on you how you make up your Perfect Pearls as to how much sparkle you're going to have. So there is our male Tilda all colored up. Isn't she beautiful? And again, here is the finished card. So on my finished card, I have used some walnut stain on this little brown piece here and around this little mat that's on my girl. I took my white Sharpie paint pen and I added it to her cheeks, and I gave her eyes a little dot. Oh, and I also distressed the edges of my buttons and then the edge of my sentiment here. So I hope you had fun coloring with me. If this is your first time using watercolors, remember it does take some practice. When I color on the video, I try to go as fast as possible so you don't have to watch it for an hour and a half, but it probably takes me twice as long to color this girl as compared to this girl. So I add a lot more stuff. I just fiddly fart with it until I get it looking however I want it to look. But if you have any questions, leave me a comment and I'll get back to you. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. Have a great day. Bye.